Welcome to the show, everybody. Today's request is from Kelly, who is requesting that we check out the song Better, Desperately Wanting by Better Than EZRA. So yeah, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it.
Pass the road to your house that you never call home.
I love his voice. I love the guitar too. Okay, so right now I'm looking down on Twitch. Laura says this song sounds like Matchbox 20. 100%. I'm getting mad Matchbox 20 vibes, which is amazing because Matchbox 20 is probably literally in my top 5 favorite bands, which I'd never heard of them before doing reactions, which is mind-blowing. But let's start from the beginning. I'm absolutely loving this so far.
Pass the road to your house.
Is that tambourine?
That you never call home.
Yeah, just love the tone of everything.
Where they turned out your lights, though they say you'll never know.
I love that guitar.
Running through the wet grass, falling a step behind. Both of us never tiring, desperately wanting.
Oh, this is 90s alternative rock, I think.
Filled you full of those pills. You were never quite right.
We haven't got to the chorus yet. Dripping in nostalgia.
Kick 'em right in the face. Make them wish they weren't born. And if they bring up your name, will they say you won the war? Baby, best in the world.
Yeah, just kick.
Never give it a chance. And then they ask what went wrong. Well, you never had it right.
How are these guys not bigger, man? They should have blown up in the 90s. What's with him and just kicking the air, eh? His facial expressions are great, too. He plays guitar too, bass. This feels like a long song. A lot of transitions, tempo changes. Yeah. Outro. All right, that was better than Ezra Desperately Wanting. That was absolutely phenomenal. Wow. When did these guys, okay, 1996. Friction Baby. Yeah, 90s. Alternative rock 90s, man. Oh. Yeah, I always say it, but 90s alternative is like, yeah, top 3 favorite sounds of all time. Like just sounds, period. Like it's just, I love the guitar tone of this stuff. I also love the extremely, like I find 90s alternative, it has like, first of all, massive choruses. And I don't know okay, so looking at this quickly, this was produced by Don Gehman. There's a chance that he's the one who produced a lot of 90s rock bands. So we're talking Matchbox 20, Goo Goo Dolls, Counting Crows. Let's see. John Mellencamp. Don't know any of his stuff, but obviously he's famous. Hootie and the Blowfish. Okay, so definitely. REM. Rem. Tracy Chapman. So yeah, he's like a big time 90s producer. Yeah. He actually, like, he loves John Mellencamp. And then here's Better Than Ezra. So yeah, he was like big Rem, Hootie and the Blowfish, and John Mellencamp. Those are like the big 3 artists. But man, just 90s rock is like, it's just the best. The choruses are massive, incredibly catchy, incredibly emotional. Always, again, the drummer, I love the grooves they get in. Just really catchy. Like, I don't know if melodic grooves is the right word, because I don't know if a groove can be melodic. Because a lot of the time, like, I think of melody is a note sequence. I don't usually think of, but then again, I think what happens is a grooving drummer can accentuate a good catchy melody, right? If a drummer does too much, they can take you out of the experience, which is what I've noticed a lot because I'm a metalhead. A lot of the stuff, like now, like listening to a lot of stuff, the metal stuff I was listening to even 3 years ago, I find the drums are a lot of the time overkill now, where I get pulled out of experiences. I kind of like, I get pulled into the drums all the time. And I'm like, I want to be more in with the guitars and the vocals, even though I love drumming. It's because, for me at least, what I really gravitate is the melody. It's the big feeling. And it's, again, it's like, I love that feeling I get from a big melody. You know what I mean? A big open note, passion, just boom, an arena chorus, that kind of thing. It's like, I love just the vibe of those kind of things, right? Then you just get a drummer who, is just playing in that groove and doing some tasty stuff. Like the drummer in this band, very like simple drumming, but again, it worked. Maybe it was the drumming with the bass guitar, because a lot of the time in 90s alternative music, the drummer and the bass guitar are like best friends in the mix. Like, again, you have a lot of, movement and a lot of the, I think a lot of the swagger, I don't know if I'd use the word swagger, a lot of the groove and because 90s rock for me has a feeling of fluidity. I don't know if you guys pick that up too, but I find a lot of 90s music has a feeling of fluidity, and I think it's all to do with the bass guitar and the drumming. Again, just kind of simplistic drumming, but just some really tasteful beats and rhythms. And then that bass guitar is just really grooving. And maybe the bass guitar is playing melodically, because again, a bass can play separate notes and stuff. So maybe it's the bass and then the chords and because everything is really kind of creating this emotional, catchy, grooving tapestry for the vocals to just be emotional, be big, be extremely melodic, extremely catchy. Like, again, such catchy earworm choruses, which again, I sometimes don't like to say because I feel like distilling something too catchy a lot of the time downplays what it actually does really well. Like, first of all, making a hook stick in your ear. I wouldn't say it's easy and I wouldn't say it's hard, because nowadays it seems like producers can kind of literally engineer that. But one thing I do find is modern pop music I usually don't like. Pop music from the 90s I usually love. So there is a distinction between, I felt the 90s had a lot of emotion, even in the pop music. Backstreet Boys, tons of emotion in Backstreet Boys, right? And just a lot of different artists, right? So there's something that happened with pop music in the 2000s, probably specifically the 2010s. The 2010s, there just seemed to be this push to taking away a lot of the feeling and the depth of the melodies, the depth of the chorus. And I think that the depth I'm gravitating towards more is emotional depth, because I don't know if the melodies themselves have any more depth. But then again, the human being singing the melody is what gives the melody depth, right? So like this guy, he's a very emotional guy. He's a very passionate is probably the right word. He's a very passionate human being. You can tell by his kicks, him kicking the air and him just looking like he's really intense a lot of the time in the song, right? And I think that, you know, when you give someone like that a catchy melody, they give it depth, because again, that's who they are as a human being. Nowadays, I think a lot of the reason why pop music is lacking is there doesn't seem to be any depth to the human beings that are singing the music. Maybe part of that is auto-tune. Literally, they're auto-tuned the humanity out of their voice. But then again, even when I look at the lyrics of a lot of modern pop music, it doesn't seem to be very meaningful. There's doesn't seem to be very much depth to it, you know what I mean? But overall, this was, my God, I fucking love this. If they can keep this up, they're gonna end up being up there with like Gin Blossoms, Tonic, Matchbox 20, Goo Goo Dolls, Counting Crows. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. Who am I forgetting, guys? I think those are my top 5. But just, yeah, 90s alternative is the shit. But let's jump into the lyrics of this one now. All right, and we're back with Better Than EZRA, Desperately Wanting. So what have the artists said about the song? Desperately Wanting is a song where someone is looking back on their childhood. This guy, I do that all the time. Specifically, that song is about when I used to camp out with my friends in the summer down in the south. And you'd stay up all night causing havoc, throwing rocks at passing cars, knocking over mailboxes, and vandalizing, as red-blooded men are wont to do. That's even interesting. That reminds me of so many 90s movies. And, like, I feel like, yeah, I was with my mom and a mutual friend of ours. We were having a movie night. We watched Armageddon. I think this was 3 weeks ago. And my mom's, I think, 62 years old. I know, terrible. She's either 61 or 62, because my dad and my mom are 1 year apart, and I always forget which one it is. It throws me off. And then Paul is, I think, also 60 years old. And I asked them, I was like, you know, because I do a lot of music on the channel, I feel like I have a decent grasp on culture because again, I feel so much of the culture of a time period is wrapped up in the sounds and the movies. And it's like art is the thing that almost tells you in retrospect what that era meant to you, what that era was all about. You see the themes of an era play out in the music and the lyrics. What did people sing about? What did they care about? What did they care about? Then the movies are, again, you're watching as people lived in the 90s and the 80s, you know what I mean? And I asked them, I was like, you know, what was the 80s like? Because I think I asked them specifically on the 80s. I asked my mom and Paul, I said, what was the 80s like for you guys? And then we ended up having a conversation about the 80s and disco and big hair and shoulder pads and all this stuff, you know what I mean? And what I'm getting at with this is, like, I just love this. Like, this feels so 90s to me. This just, I don't know if it was American Pie. I don't know if it was, there was something in the zeitgeist in the 90s where it seemed to be a lot of movies and stuff was about teenagers enjoying their freedoms and pushing the rules. That seemed to be a thing about the 90s, is rebellion in some sense. Obviously, rebellion is a part of, growing up. It's a part of teenagehood. So it's not like it only was in the 90s, but I think it was like the 90s was the culture that took something that already existed and kind of like played it up like this is important. I think every era, every decade takes something of human nature and they play it up. And it's like the 80s was all about like decadence, right? The 80s was a big, again, as I always say, big hair, big choruses, power ballads, just huge, catchy pop music, big production, right? And it was like, so I think that era took the part of all of us, that is the thing that loves the extravagance, and it played that up. The 90s took the part of us that has the depth and the questioning in certain parts. Obviously, the 90s had its pop scene, it had its alternative rock scene, it had its metal scene. Like, you know what I mean? Even 80s, you had Metallica and Iron Maiden. So it's not like every decade is limited by its music, but there's certain themes that play out in mainstream music and in mainstream art in any given decade or whatever, right? So I find that really interesting. And literally, you're running all through the neighborhood and through the yards, and there's the dew on the grass. And it's about those nights spent with a friend running around, running through the wet grass. And then it's a story of two people who took divergent paths in life. One person made a lot of bad decisions and ended up having some mental issues. And then just how you lose touch with people. Yeah, I really like the singer of this band. I like the way he looks at things. Kevin Griffin. Oh, there's violin. Oh, wait, holy shit. There's a lot going on in this song. I think because the mix was pretty poor in this, because this is like a 240p music video, right? I think a lot of things got missed out by me in the mix. But obviously, what really stood out is the main instrumentation, the vocals, the guitar, the drums, that kind of thing. But yeah, Kevin Griffin. Yeah, he I like this this kind of reminds me of Gin Blossoms, you know what I mean? Again, like, because the Gin Blossoms song, if I recall correctly, was a bit more of a meditation on a time period. There seemed to be a worldly perspective in his brain. Like some artists, they get hyper focused on themselves. And other artists, like even Goo Goo Dolls, I love Goo Goo Dolls. But if I recall correctly, I think Johnny mostly sings about his experiences. He doesn't really get outside of his experiences, where some alternative rock artists, the other end of the spectrum, or there isn't really a spectrum, but the other archetype in this genre is the frontmen who like to sing about time periods and moments. And again, everything I'm kind of talking about. And it seems like Kevin is more, and we all have balances of all of them, right? He obviously is going to sing about himself too, as he is in the song. But it's just interesting that some artists tend to extend the circumstances of their life outside of just their own perspective in some sense, even though it is about his perspective. Again, it's just, there's a worldly quality to the way that he is envisioning his life, you know what I mean? Which again, I kind of do that as well. And how when you're young and you're running around all night and life hasn't had its way with you, the playing field is equal and it's flat, and then life takes it. See, again, this is very philosophical. Everything he's talking about is a very, like, the way I view philosophy is almost the self-reflection on life. People that are very philosophical tend to reflect on life itself, right? It's kind of like psychological people usually reflect on themselves a lot, and then philosophical people usually reflect on life a lot. So it's like he's kind of like, seems to be philosophical in the way that he views things. I like that, yeah. I like that. When life hasn't had its way with you yet, the playing field is equal and it's flat, and then life takes everybody on their own journeys. Yeah, even again, and then life. Like, he's talking about life like it's this thing, which I always literally do all the time. But there's a time where all your potential is untapped and the world hasn't had its way with you. That's an amazing time of promise, and that's what Desperately Wanting is about. That was fascinating. I've often thought about that in my life. It seems like my youth was simultaneously more exciting, more scary. Again, think about being in high school, you know? Like a girl breaks your heart and it fucking shatters you. Like I remember, you know, having my heart broken in grade 8. I was like crying like a baby on the school bus for I think like an hour straight on the way out. Like I was just like done. I was so wrecked, and it was just like looking back, it's like that's so interesting. It's just like when you're young, all you have is your feelings. In some sense, you have a hard time getting outside of your feelings, and so if you feel sad, happy, angry, it's like that's what you have. That's what life is. It's like, you know, when you're a child, you paint life so vividly and so dramatically, so what's the word? It's like you thickly paint life with the strokes of your emotions. And it's like it's so hard to see life clearly. And as you get older, you tend to get more belief systems, which end up being another lens by which you can't view life through. But, you know, those of us that stay fluid and we allow things to impact us, but we don't hold on to them and we don't make stories about what that makes life mean, we have a better ability to go with the ebbs and flows of life and see life for what it is more clearly than we could when we were a youth. And also, some people actually, as they get older, they have an even harder time actually being with life as it is, because life becomes their greatest enemy, because life is the thing that's fucked you over, right? You know, again, you know, I know some people in my life that very much that kind of becomes their perspective, right? Is that they get locked into their anger and they can't understand. They just get so bitter. It's like they don't understand how bad things can happen to you. I think they take it so personally. That might be a sense with bitterness, is that bitterness happens when you take things you take life so personally. It's like you take the universe and existence. It's like you think that everything is fucking you over. Everything is almost targeting you. Because sometimes when I talk to people like that, that's what it kind of sounds like. It's like, wait, it feels like you're almost, this is like, you know, you're a martyr, you know, like you feel so targeted by life. It's like it just happens. You know what I mean? Very interesting. But ladies and gentlemen, this was Better Than Ezra, Desperately Wanting. Absolutely brilliant song. This is definitely one of my favorite songs we've done in a little while. I know there's a good chance I said this exact same thing last week, and I might have, but as of right now, standing right now, I feel like I haven't heard a song I've liked this much in a little bit. So thank you very much, Kelly, for this incredible song. And as always, if you guys have any song requests for me, join everybody in the Patreon, link down below. And yeah, and this is the first song we've done by Better Than Ezra. But if you want to go on our alternative rock journey with myself and everybody, click right here, and I'll see you in the next one.